what a great entry, Eirik. It just was really fun to study your interpretation of this, and you put a lot of work into it. That's really obvious. So, there are some really great spots that I hope to remember going over as we go along, and I comment about balance and so on. All right, so I have to take issue once again, and I'm seeing this from orchestrators who are submitting works that are really, as close to professional as I could want, right? With needing a little bit of coaching, right? But I am seeing this one error, A1. Okay, so once again, everybody watching, there is no such thing as A1. Okay, it's this, right? See, now here you're doing it right, number 1, right? Okay, once again, in case you haven't seen this in other videos where I've talked about this, A1 is just saying, hey, with one person. Just put a player, put one player on that. Which player? Well, the first player. If you mean the first player, then you just write the number of the player. You don't say with one, right? Now here we're saying with two because there are two players who are available to play this line in unison, right? So we're saying with two, instead of saying 1 period, 2 period, it's just faster and it's easier on the eye for the conductor and stuff, right? But then when you get here to with one, with which one? Well, if we know that it's player number 1, then just write number 1, 1 period, right? Okay. And, right here, trumpet 3, you don't even have to write trumpet 3. You could just write the number 3 and get it right next to that, note, right, and the score, and save yourself some vertical space. Okay, so that is, I don't know. I mean, it shouldn't be a pet peeve because this is something that actually started happening. I've had these orchestration challenges for quite a while now. Going back to the beginnings of this community, really. And this whole idea of A1 just started to crop up in scores for the past maybe 2 years. So please, everybody, just stop using A1. Just write the number of the player, okay? All right. So, largely speaking, I'm seeing some good approaches to slurring and some other approaches that don't quite, that are more just copy and pasting the original phrasing of the piano. All right, so that would be the thing I would say watch out for the most. Because, there are going to be some balance things that we'll talk about in a minute. But you have to think, about the breath of the player, right? And whether or not breathing all the way through, even over like a new section, right? So this right here is like the resolution, right? The harmonic resolution of the passage. Is it, do you really want that? Do you really want that all in one breath, right? Or like the bowing right here. This just would really be difficult to bow. It's hard enough to bow for this length of time and to really get all of the nuances that you're asking the player. But also, what's really hard to bow is to bow from a single note into a series of triple stops, or to go from there to divisi. It's just a little weird, you know what I mean? It's not impossible at all to go from a single line to divisi. That is just, but it's just still like you start to lose the emphasis of the phrasing and everything else. Right now here, look at how this is, these are separate notes. Why can't the strings be separate notes? And and then that way the musicians can work together. All right, so I'm really going to have to make that video that I talked about of transcription, just common transcription problems or errors. All right, but I mean, I don't want to get hung up on it too much. But obviously, you didn't come, you didn't submit your score to me so that I could praise you. You know you're great, right? This is a really fine entry. It's. I mean, I don't like to say, oh well, this one is a top entry and that one is not as much at the top. That's not it at all. It's more that I see the player getting closer to their goals with certain entries, right? So this entry, it's there are still some things that you need coaching with, but it is still like closer to being put on the stands. Let's put it that way. All right, so let's talk about the melody now. So there was a bit of a discussion over whether or not breaking the phrase would sound like Lili Boulanger, and here, I mean, I feel that it is just natural, da 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 da. I mean, I feel that just it allows the player to tongue the downbeat, right? That's the whole point of it. And then here you go, you slur across the bar. And, I mean, it's this isn't something that I've said is, that I'm trying to say is right or wrong, but just something that I want the composers or the orchestrators to think about, right? Of removing emphasis from the downbeat. Now, obviously, if you have, if you're hitting the downbeat with other instruments, right, and then slurring across it with the melody, I mean, I guess that's fine, but it just, you want to think about, so here, I mean, here you had a slurring pattern, and then you dispense with it here, right? And you just slur across it, right? So just think about consistency. Think about being able to tongue the downbeat, right? And so on. I mean, wind players can play so legato. I mean, they can make you feel like everything is connected, but still, if you break the slur, it doesn't really matter in terms of the sense of legato, right? And it's pretty obvious that this is all intended to be as smooth as possible, right? So there's no problem with that. Don't worry about breaking a slur that was in the original piano version, all right? Okay, so the orchestration right here is totally fine. Bassoons, doubling strings, and just a beautiful little statement right there. And then it opens up really, really nicely. Harp and celesta doubling each other at an octave. Just you're aware that celesta sounds an octave higher than written, right? So that you're really like stacking these in octaves. It's just I just really want to be sure because I'm seeing identical writing in harp and celesta, and the first thing that I think about is, does this orchestrator know that celesta is going to sound an octave higher than the harp, and so that certain harmonies are going to sit on top of each other, right? I just want to be sure about that. I mean, it works, but there have been a couple of arrangements where the way that they sat on top of each other, just to me, just felt unclear. Just kind of like there would be a place in the middle where they clashed a little bit harmonically. Not really clash, but just you might get a lot of tone clustering. Okay, so this is nice. You're bringing in the horns, and the flutes are expanding, or the flute is expanding upwards. That's very cool. Doubling the first violin, and yeah, so here it is not going to, like, the flute is not going to be wasted, right? Even though it's going down to A and B here, it still is soft enough and sparsely accompanied enough to where it's still an effective doubling instrument. And it gives that top line a nice pearly kind of quality. It's interesting how you shift over from horns to trombones right here. And that does help to underline the middle of the bar. So that's a cool effect. Yeah, and then shifting over from horns to bassoons right in here, and clarinet. Yeah, so I mean that is all cool. All right, and then da 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 dum bum ba da dum bum. I'm just going to point out, as I did with other scores, that the melody note right here is the middle note, right, and the F sharp on top is is a harmony note, right? It's just an upper harmony. But I mean, here you are. You know, there's a sense of playing through, right? So I mean, that's all good. I mean, you're actually basically doubling it here. So this is some pretty cool little brass writing in here, brass and wind writing. I would actually say that it's not a good idea to put in a nuance like this when you're trying to merge the sound with the winds and you leave it out of the winds, right? So like whatever the trumpets are doing, the winds should be doing even more so, right? Or else that they kind of get buried with the little flaring of the trumpet. I mean, and even in a piano dynamic, just a little bit of push there from the trumpets can start to obscure the winds, right? So if you're going to leave it out of anything and put it in anywhere, it really should be the winds that flare and not the trumpet, right? But you can put in the nuance with both, but don't leave it out, is what I'm saying, okay? Interesting to have bassoon at an octave below the trumpets. That is a cool effect, and it works well with oboe. But the thing about oboe doubling trumpet is that the trumpet will tend to just really bury the oboe, even in a combination like this, right? Unless either the trumpet is marked down or the trumpet is muted, right? So here, like, if that is something, by the way, that is true to Lili Boulanger, is that she would put straight mutes in her trumpets whenever she had delicate scoring like this, where the winds were combining with the trumpets, and especially in the case of doubling a melodic line like this, right? So, if you were able to, if you're able to have the oboe play that middle note as well, right? Anyway, just a thought. Okay, so I mean, I like the motion in here. I like that. I like these colors. Let's move on. So we're coming to the bum 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 bum, and this is very simply scored. You've got clarinets, trumpets, and trombones, and celesta all combining together. So this is going to work really, really well, except for the celesta, right? So. But the thing is, like, you don't really want to be too soft, right? Because you kind of want a call and response thing happening here. So the first instance of it can't be too, it can't be too very, very soft. So I would say just move the celesta up an octave and mark it louder, right? You'd even mark it forte, which is just really the same as mezzo piano for the rest of the orchestra, right? So I would just say octave higher on the celesta, mark it, mark it mezzo forte, and you have a fighting chance for that celesta to come through. I think that the way that you've got it scored now, I mean, that's a really cool idea, but the celesta just isn't strong enough to be competing with brass in this way, even at a soft dynamic. And it's, it's just because the brass is so naked right there. You know what I mean? It's just it's I mean, there can be situations where there is brass scoring and wind scoring and so on and so forth, and they're playing soft, and there's some celesta in there, and you can hear the celesta. But in this case, we're having like a note for note doubling, right, of all of these functions. So that will tend to sap the strength and the color and the identity from the celesta, and you can even hear it in the you can even hear it in the mock-up, right? That's not lying to you there. Now here, do you really mean like a staccato on a, dun, 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 dun? I mean, I don't think that, so just, don't put a staccato mark on a dotted half note, right? Just write out the exact length of time you want that note to be, which would be, I guess, a dotted quarter note, right? A dotted crotchet. Okay, and then we have the response. Bum 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 bum. So this is really nicely balanced though, right? Like you have really soft brass. I would actually say even pianissimo here on trumpets going down towards triple P. Okay, that will work really, really nicely. Okay, and now, bum, 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 bum. Now, I already talked a little bit about the, just having a really, really long slurs. It doesn't really matter in the strings because it's just tremolo. Some purists would take issue whether or not you needed to have a tie, but I think that ties on tremolo are fine. Okay, just so long as you are trying to make it easy on the player, in the sense of revealing certain note values that continue on. Now this is confusing though. You're having a 3-beam tremolo tie to a 2-beam tremolo. So if you really intend this to be, da 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 da, that kind of, rather than right there, unmeasured tremolo to measured tremolo. So if you really intend this to be just going down to 16th notes, then don't put in the tie, right? That's because that's two different things, right? So you're not tying. The idea of tying is that you are maintaining a certain a certain line, a certain note continuing on, right? Whereas here, this is not the same thing. If you really, maybe this is just a mistake, and you intended this to be unmeasured tremolo all the way through, and you accidentally hit the wrong button on your keypad, and this is supposed to be 3-beam tremolos, right? In that case, the tie is fine, but don't tie it if you're going from 3 beams to 2 beams, okay? Okay, and this is neat, like the whole arpeggiation here in the clarinet and so on. Now, I would take issue with the need for the first clarinet to be at piano. It kind of doesn't make any sense to me. And the same thing for the bassoon. That's not going to make any difference at all. All you're doing here is submerging those elements so that they will not really be heard at all, right? So, if you have your second clarinet hitting those same pitches at mezzo forte, diminuendo, and then you have your first player hitting it at piano, the first clarinet will just be kind of an echo, and the effect will be lost because it is already being played mezzo forte by the second oboe, right? That particular line. So, and by tremolo violin. So so watch out for that. Just really I would just say have the same, have just a single dynamic for this entire thing and all the instruments, and the effect will be fine. Okay, and then ba da 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 dum bum bum. Okay, and I love that this little reaction here, strings only, just playing normally with wind in the background. All right, and da 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 do 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 do. Yeah. So this, yeah, this is fine. Flutes at octaves, A2 flutes at octaves with A2 oboes. All right, and then we've got the trumpet at the bottom. I don't know if you need to go A2 with the trumpet, right? It seems to me that we have that same problem that we talked about before, right? Trumpet and oboe doubling, and the trumpets are not muted, right? So it really is going to submerge the oboe right there. It helps that there are little touches of that line coming from below, in the viola, right? Yeah, sometimes combining, sometimes, I think the viola could have just doubled the, at pitch with that second line. But it still works fine. I like the motion right in here of the cello. And this was really, really nicely done. This phrase coming to an end here. Yeah, no problems with that. All right. Da 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 bum bum. The resolution. Yeah, and this is all cool too. Yeah. Now here, you do not need to do this. Piano crescendo to mezzo forte crescendo to, what? It's better to know what is the ultimate destination. If it's forte, then just go piano to forte, right? I think I mentioned this in the last score, right? It makes us feel a little less sophisticated to just go piano crescendo to forte, but don't worry about it. That's just a really common thing, all right? So these people can start in at mezzo forte, stay at mezzo forte, and then ease out, and then they are coloring the strings rather than competing with them. All right, so I would just say, just go piano crescendo to forte, right? And don't leave out the dynamic in your lower strings, right? So there's like no sense of the lower strings absolutely should be crescendoing with everybody else, okay? And same thing with the double basses. I don't think you need to go to divisi double basses here. All right, this could just be all of the bass players. Yeah, and then just a little touch of trumpet right there at the end. So yeah, so really cool first screen. Now this second screen, it just really has got some lovely ideas. Like, look, see, you're writing 1 and 2. 1, right? So, so where was that A1 stuff coming from? I don't understand. Like, see, you're doing it right here. You're just absolutely doing it exactly the right way, right? So I don't know where that A1 stuff came from, right? So so you should know that is not what to do. Now here I'm noticing that this may be a copy-paste error. Okay, maybe there was something that was in first voice or second voice or something like that had the stems reversed, right? So just select the bar, type X, problem solved, right? So if you're using, obviously you're using Sibelius because I'm editing your Sibelius score. People using Sibelius, if you've got some transcription, you're taking like maybe a score that I have posted in Patreon and the stems are going the wrong direction, just select the section, type X, and boom. Your your stems are now pointing the right direction. Same thing here, right? It's just really confusing. All right, so that should be one of your, I think that is something that you can edit yourself, right? Okay, yeah, but going back to this is beautiful, this little background thing. There isn't any dynamic marking right here at the beginning, right? So you like at the beginning of a new passage, even if you've established a dynamic in one or two instruments in the previous bar, just give us, for the beginning of a major section, really just give us the the dynamic here, which I'm assuming is piano, right? Okay, so most of this screen is just like one approach, and it's really beautiful, right? It's just very nicely done. So we've got celesta. Okay, so here I would actually have the celesta play an octave higher, right? Just so that it would have more of a chance to add its characters. Because like what it's going to do here, the celesta is going to do here is it's going to add a little bit of color to your flutes and violins, but it's really not going to have any character of its own, right? So it would be better if this were just scored up an octave, and you can just score it like this. Like in fact, it could look exactly like this, right? And then sounding, and then just put that on the treble staff, and then just leave it up to the player whether or not to use two hands or one hand or whatever, right? So there's celesta uses so much pedal and so much, just like the pedal for phrasing. It's basically just a chime instrument, right? So myself as a keyboard player, I all I need is just a single line, for most of this. In fact, you'll see a lot of celesta scoring where there really is just a single staff, right? And even for this kind of stuff. Okay. So, but it's still really, really nice. Gorgeous, really. The whole idea here, a little bit of rolled harp. And right, then ba ba dee dee ba 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 ba. Yeah, you don't take your piccolo too high, and that is really a great caution there. Yeah. Okay, and your strings really get quite high there. Yeah, so that high F sharp right there, I'm not saying that it's out of range, but maybe this is the place where you might want to start, like maybe for this last note, that top note could be an artificial harmonic. That is really, because the player may just well do that anyway. So like your divisi players are sort of working through this, and then they're reaching over to get this, like these lower notes will all be played on the A string, right? And the higher notes are going to be played on the E string. So they just keep reaching over, and here they're going to get to a point where it's really hard to figure out, like where is the tuning going to be for this. So they're going to reach over to play this F sharp, and they're going to jump down an octave, the players who play the top line. And they are going to just get that as that high note as an F sharp artificial harmonic 2 octaves below. So yeah, just really make sure that you mark this divisi, because while all of these octaves are, very easily played, when you just get really incredibly high like that, it just becomes kind of fiddly and unpleasant, and there's kind of more of a whispery sound, I find, at least with my own playing. Like if just getting up there and having the bow play 2 strings in octaves really, really high. I mean, there's a certain limit to double stops, right? So just make sure that this is marked divisi. I think everybody would play it divisi anyway, but yeah. All right, see, so here we got more stems pointing the wrong direction, right? There's no need for that. I think that's something that I could rightly ask my participants in these challenges to correct. I haven't been pointing it out yet, but I mean, Eirik, you should just know, right? That could be one of your goals in editing and preparing your score. Okay, and all of this support here from lower winds and brass is all beautiful. It's just very, very well done. Piano crescendo doesn't really convey a whole lot, but you're only doing it for 2 bars, so then diminuendo. It might be better to be more precise with hairpins right in here, right? Just because you've got, if you're marking it out for the melody, you might as well just drop all of those, into the mix, right? And here, like this note, crescendo, right? Right, so we gotta, everybody needs to know that they are getting bigger. All right. Okay, so now we get to the beautiful ending. Da 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 bum 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 bum. Again, what I really, really liked about this is that you varied the fluid portion of the phrasing. Okay, so here, just really, really simple octaves in firsts and violas and harmony for everybody else, a little bit of horn in the background. And I really like just the delicacy of the dynamics. It's just really first rate. Just bringing everybody out of the sound picture as other things are going on. The dynamics could probably be louder, right here at the beginning. Piano, I would say piano to piano is probably better of an approach there. And you could also add nuances to this as well, so that the instruments come out of the sound picture, right? I would say if you're going to stay with pianissimo, I would put in some kind of hairpin going in and out of the dynamic. So this all works fine, and I really like the way that you've scored this across instruments that can largely cope with all of the entire range that their phrase needs to go, right? So, except for getting to the oboes here, obviously. And that's also very well done to prevent the oboe from getting too low and too honky. Yeah, and then a little bit of trombone, that's fine. This might actually work better as horns, even though you're going to be getting low. But like this note for a horn is only like written F sharp, right? Okay. Okay, now, continuing on, we're sort of staying with the same formula of firsts and violas playing the melody, but now we're adding on, at an octave higher, flute, oboe doubling the firsts. Okay, so I think I've mentioned this in other evaluations. If you put the flute on top, and then you have, like, winds and strings doubling from below, there is a chance, the flute would probably come out here, but there is a chance that the overtones of the strings will somewhat bury the sound of the flute. I think A2 flutes is not as much of a problem, but yeah, and it also gives you a kind of a very cool sound as opposed to a warmer sound that you would get if this flute were being doubled by strings at that same octave, right? So just be careful. I'm seeing that a lot of that stacking, like, so, where strings are playing an octave and then winds are playing an octave, but it's an octave higher. So they're doubling in the middle. So, and of course it's almost always flute on top because that's the highest instrument, but the one that is the most in danger of having its of being slightly swamped by the resonance of the first violins. All right, so just watch out. I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm saying that it might not work, right? All right, so going on to the next screen. That takes us here, and this was really interesting that you have more accompaniment come in here with your winds, and then you've got this very, very simple pizzicato in firsts and cellos, plus mezzo staccato in trumpets and trombones, and I feel that works really, really great. I think it's sufficient here just to have a tenor clef going up to that C. I don't think you need treble clef there. You know what I mean? It's just the C is just the third space above the staff, right? Or the second, what some people would call second ledger line space note, right? So that's really no problem to read for an experienced trombone player. All right, and then, yeah, once more, A1. Why not just say 1, right? Just number 1, 1 period. Okay? So keep that in mind. Let's see if we can stamp out A1. Okay? Stamp out A1. Let's, let us make that commitment, everybody. So here you mark ordinario, but I'm not sure what you are saying ordinary from what, because I didn't notice any sul tasto or sul ponticello or sul G or anything like that coming before. So you do not cancel pizzicato with ordinario. You cancel pizzicato with arco always, okay? And then here, so this is really confusing for a conductor or a copyist, right? So ordinario of what, right? I don't, I actually I gave the score a look over just now. I took a break in the continuity of this evaluation to just jump back and check it out, and maybe I missed it, but I did not see any string effects, right? So if there aren't any string effects, then don't use ordinario to cancel them, right? And do not use ordinario to cancel pizzicato. Use arco, okay? It's just the simplest thing. It's sort of like using the up roll, right? The roll with an arrow at the top, which really should only be used when there are down arrows to contrast with, right? So you use an up arrow roll, people start looking for the down arrow roll. You use ordinario to cancel pizzicato, and people start looking for where was the sul ponticello, or did I miss it? What's going on, right? So that's another one for the list. Okay. So now we're getting higher and higher with our wind accompaniment. Now, really be aware, like you're really reaching for the sky right in here. And I feel that this could really come down, right? This is fine. The altitude right in here is fine. But you just have to be aware of the quality of tone, right? Going all the way up to this A, right? A for a piccolo, that high A is going to whistle. It is going to just cut the ear, okay? And the flute, right, this is where you start to lose control of your dynamic quality, right? Your dynamic quality and tone, right? So you're saying piano crescendo, which is sort of like, a warm, you're aiming for like a warm, fuller sound right in here, trending toward a forced sound, right? It's piano trending towards forte. So you're not going to get that up there on that high A, right? I mean, really great players can control it, and they do it all the time, but you cannot take that for granted. So I would just say drop this an octave. It is fine where it is. And notice you're getting farther and farther away from the strings, the ability of the strings to support and underline what the winds are doing, right? So at this point, these notes are just being doubled by clarinet and bassoon, which is fine, okay? But it's just so far away, the flutes and the piccolo. So it just really is going to stand out at this very icy and, tending towards slightly painful to listen to, right at that top arc, right? You really, in a real live situation, the arc of the overtones is going to pull at the ear, right? Which is something I don't think you want right in here. You want something to be you want this all to be incredibly delicate. Now, I'm just totally on board with everything else here. That's great. I mean, I love the way that you have got the harp, mezzo staccato harp, and this is a specific thing on harp. They will pluck and then they'll slightly damp as they, so like there'll be finger damping in between each one of these, right? So that is a specific quality of harp. You left out a slur here, right? So just edit your slurs on their way. I mean, you're too good of an orchestrator not to do that, right? Now here, you should always slur your fingered tremolos, right? So for instance, this note here, right? It's probably the best way to do it. I would say this is probably the best way to do it because that will underline the sense of pacing in your mezzo staccato. But it's really a great idea, that the measure tremolo right in there. Okay, now here, so mute, it's not really a lot of time for the trombonists to get their mutes together, right? And what's more, you've got this kind of overlap here of your horns, trombone, tuba, kind of overlapping what's going on here in the strings. I think you should reverse it. Have the strings go longer, have the brass sort of conk out early, like just basically tie to the end of, or tie to the beginning of the bar, or even just end at the end of this bar, so that there's plenty of time to grab the mute. Like here, the trumpet player has got enough time to pop the mute in, but the trombone player, you know, some people will say, oh, well, they could hang the mute, but how long are they going to be hanging the mute, right? From what? Because you really are using your trombones in a pretty constant way throughout this arrangement. Okay, so just to be completely pedantic about it here, you would want a slur under, like you'd want a slur on each voice here for this mezzo staccato, like, and same thing right in here. And there's absolutely zero reason for this to be in two separate voices, right? And there's zero reason for this to be in separate voices as well, right? It would be easier if these were all like on the same stem, so you could just go one, two, like, look, and this is beautiful, 1, 2, right? I mean, it's great. You're too good to use A1, okay? Just don't use A1 anymore. So, like, this is the right way to do it. You're doing it right. Just keep doing it the right way. All right. But this is all cool, the little grace notes. I think that's all just very, very charming scoring. Okay. Maybe have everybody play mezzo staccato there, so that you maintain the same sense of tonguing and everything else. Yeah, and so keep in mind that, like, with a mezzo staccato like this, it's going to be breath directed, right? So staccato without without slurs over it these are all going to be tongued separately, right? They're all short notes, not necessarily bouncy. They can be bouncy if you want them to be. Okay, but these are all going to be short notes. Now, with the whole slur over it, then you get, in the sense of mezzo staccato, that is like using the diaphragm to punch out the little staccatos, right? Because it's all under one breath, so it's the stomach that does the punching, right? So that is as a specific effect. Now here, I'm not so sure how well this works. I think that you can dispense with the whole mezzo staccato idea here, right? I think that this is just a lot clearer, right? Okay. I'm not saying that it's impossible. It's just kind of fiddly and unnecessary, right? If everybody else is doing mezzo staccato, then that's what, then that's fine. Okay, and then we finally have our, bum, 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 bum. This is really nice, this little kind of throbbing. I don't think you need all 4 of your horns on this. I think 2 are fine. I mean, it's just kind of an intense sound. Almost to the point where, like, if this really were scored, the conductor might be keeping an eye on the horns to make sure that they didn't play out too much because of the thickness of the tone, right? Okay, yeah. So this all works fine. Now this should just be written as a trill, right, to keep it simple, right? Just the whole fingered tremolo idea. If you have neighboring notes on a fingered tremolo, that is a trill, right? So just keep it simple for the players. But I don't really see any other problems here. The harp, the strings. Okay, so in this case here, though, the harp and the celesta need to be marked up, right? So there's absolutely no reason whatsoever when you've got a texture like this where everybody's playing pianissimo. There's absolutely no reason for the harp to be playing pianissimo, right? The harp should be playing and you've got accents as well. This should be piano, right? And also you don't need to. Harp is just like piano, okay? It has a single dynamic in the middle. Now, if you are having problems getting getting your dynamics to sound, to change in both hands for your sound set playback, that's because you're not asking them to be in all voices. So just click all, okay, and now this single dynamic here will apply to both hands, all right? And if you don't do that, then the left hand will continue to mindlessly play mezzo forte all the way through your score. So always, if you want your sound sets to be activated in the right way for your mock-ups in Sibelius, just make sure that it is all voices, right? Like that this dynamic applies to all, and that way, any kind of two-staff instrument will get both staves to comply. Even if you have a three-staff instrument, like occasionally for harp or piano, there'll be a third staff above or below for certain extra notes. But all you need is just one dynamic right in the middle there, okay? So here, it's just a question of clarity. Here you want the harp and the celesta to come out, right? You want them to have some kind of quality right in there, and making the harp play pianissimo is just going to drop out, right? It's even a case where if this were marked mezzo piano, like if both parts were marked mezzo piano in harp and celesta, that kind of dynamic mixing wouldn't bother me, because that is just a feature of harp and celesta anyway, right? They are usually marked up a bit so that they'll come through. Now, right in here, we have the same issue, right? So, of right here, this is a trill, not a measured tremolo. So, what you would want here is you would want the second voice to have just basically just tied F sharps, and then you have the trill below. And I think you can activate that just so long as your trill line is in second voice, right? Like, for instance, if you select this note right here, you can see that the second voice little box lights up in green. So I'm pretty sure that if you put the trill line under there, then it will just be the bottom note that trills, and not the top note. But don't quote me on that. Try it out. But I'm pretty sure that is what is going to happen, right? So non-vibrato, that's also a very, very cool effect. It just gives it a very kind of airy, resonant kind of a sound. So anyways, wow, I gave you a lot of time, but you're my first evaluation for this morning, so and I just was feeling very inspired by your effort. So really a great score. I mean, the fact that there's a lot to pick apart doesn't mean that it is a bad score ever, right? There have been some colleagues and friends of mine who have entered this who are doing professional work, and I picked their scores apart too, because they deserve the best from me in terms of my ability to interpret their work, right? They really deserve the best from me because they've supported me, they've given me help, they have, and like when my life has been tough, and we're personal friends on the internet, they've, or just in real life, they have been there for me, right? So I mean, it would be, if I just gave them a mealy-mouthed heaps of praise, then that wouldn't help them at all, and it would be cheating them of my effort, right? So yeah. So look, if I pick your score apart and I look at a bunch of things, it may be because I really love what you're doing, rather than I am disappointed in any way. All right. So I just think this is a great piece of work here, and I think you should go through it and use whatever was useful to you from what I said. And if it wasn't useful, then just disregard it. It's fine. It's like, my word is not law. It's not the end all be all. I am put on this earth to help people improve their scores if they want the advice. All right. And if the advice doesn't seem useful, then that's fine. It's like, it's not, there's no personal critique of quality or anything like that. Here, I'm going to write X, right? I just selected that, and now the stems are the right direction. So remember some of those tricks, fix some of those things next entry, which I'm really hoping to see another entry from you in the next round of challenges next year. And just thank you so much for supporting on Patreon, and for being a part of the community. It's really, it just really is important. And I'm just thinking, with the insights that you got here on your own scoring, you would have a lot to say in other scores. So please do comment on the other scores, especially of these Brev entries. I think that your insights could be really useful, or even just some praise, or some, just telling people, well, hey, I really enjoyed that particular section because XYZ. That is really important here on Patreon, and just in the larger Orchestration Online community. So Eirik, please comment on other scores. I think that your insights would be valuable to other people as well. Okay, so with that, I will regretfully shut up now about this score, and I will go on to the next one, and I hope to evaluate several more of the Brev group, and then I will take a break from Brev for a little while, do a couple of scores of the website subscribers to catch up with them, and then come back and finish up the Brev in a day or two. All right, thanks everybody, and now on to the next evaluation for me.